It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
And Les Webster.
Hello all.
Unfortunately, we are missing Liz Newman this week. She could not make it be with us for this episode. But we hope to have her back next week. And Liz, we're thinking about you, and come back soon.
Woo.
All right, so what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, my comic stack is finally getting out of control. Not the least of which because I finally picked up a whole pile of stuff last week from my friendly local comic shop.
It was much appreciated.
I bet. And so I started on it already. I have read a few things. I had gotten a hold of some of the Free Comic Book Day stuff, and of course the Tick is always entertaining for Free Comic Book Day. Those are always good stories. And the other favorite out of that pile that my shop was so kind to pull for me was the Vault offering, Maxwell's Demons. That was a fun little story. And I think it will be very interesting to see how that pans out in an actual series.
Agreed. That was a very interesting one.
That was very cool. And I also, the one I was going to throw in here that was not a Free Comic Book Day one was Aftershocks Brothers Dracul. That was also a very interesting story. Not least of which because it's actually, if not historically accurate, then it's at least historically plausible based on what I've read of Vlad Dracul in the past. So it's the beginning of what's going to be a very interesting story. I think I think it's going to get a little psychological.
Nice little plug, because that one, the next issue is out. It's out now, so
cool.
Go get it. If this is you're kind of interested in this, hey, 1 and 2 are out, so now's a chance to pick it up and see what you think. Oh, cool.
There you go. Not really intended, but okay, great. Glad I could help.
Anything else?
I mean, I've got a stack of trades that's ridiculous, but I haven't gotten into those yet. I've also for some reason I've let myself get behind on Knights of the Dinner Table, so I've got like 3 issues of that to get to catch up on. So
and that's a lot of information in those books.
Oh yeah, that takes some work because there's usually 32-ish pages of comics and then like another 30 some odd pages of like gaming stuff, which is usually pretty widely based. It's not specific to any particular style or genre or game, so it's pretty generic stuff, which makes it really helpful and useful. So yeah, I don't know how I let myself get so far behind on it. I've gotten in the bad habit of letting my comics pile build up for 3 or 4 months and then knocking it all down at once, and I don't know that this is a good habit, but you know.
Well, at least Les doesn't do anything like that.
Full roar.
If Les did something like that, it would shift the gravitational field of the Earth.
And has.
Yeah, I was about to say, can you feel that?
Yeah, I'm notorious, so I'm in the same ship you are.
I must admit, it gets kind of aggravating sometimes when I'm talking to Les. Said, "Hey, did you read this?" No, not yet.
You want
Okay, I guess we can talk about this then.
you want to talk to him about something, and he just I bet that's frustrating.
Well,
How about
enough about me.
mm,
I spent this past weekend at a convention in Rockwall, Texas, at the Rockwall High School. I want to tell them that I thoroughly enjoyed the time there. They had things set up where you were not going to get lost in anything they did. They had the vendors in one place. They had uh, some artists there. They had a lot of different areas with things to see. It looked like they were trying to get children to read, which I'm all for. And they separated it into two time frames. The first time frame was for the elementary students. The second was for the high school students. They had a pretty good turnout for everything. The opportunities were there for kids to create villains or to make sword fighting equipment, shields and battle helmets and such. They had what they called super potatoes, which were potatoes that they got to create a superhero from, make little costumes and add eyes to it, things like that. Not that a potato needs eyes, but that was in the first part. The second part, they had artists or writers doing Skype sessions, which was pretty nice, and things flowed very easily. The program ran from 8:30 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. And I think everybody there enjoyed it. All the vendors, I'm sure, did. So kudos to Rockwall High School. Hopefully they will do it again. And hopefully more people, will take advantage of it next year. I had a great time, and I think most everybody did. I did not see a scowl or a frown anywhere through the building.
And this was the first time they've done this?
Yes, sir.
Oh, cool. It's nice to see or to hear about something being that well organized on a first time out.
Mm-hmm.
That's like hope for anybody else who has ever been interested in trying to create their own con.
And I might have missed that you said this, but they actually had some creators Skyped in for some panel discussions too, right?
Yes, sir.
So that was kind of cool, like Michael Mordecai of Wasted Space fame and some other other titles that have come out real recently, but because that caught my attention. I saw the website. I was like, ooh.
It's a great idea for like a smaller upstart young con that can't afford to fly people in. You can still get people to volunteer, or I mean, to either pay them or not, whatever, but get them on Skype for a scheduled hour or whatever. That's awesome.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's that for on the conventioneer side, but I mean, for a creator, if they're really busy, and they can't take off to do a con, but you know what, they can afford 30 or 40 minutes just to kind of stop and do something like this. I think that's cool for them too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, especially if they can arrange to have some of their books there for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even sign a few before you ship them, that sort of thing. I think it's a perfectly viable way of doing it.
That's a pretty cool idea.
So yeah, good for them.
All righty. Anything else?
No, nothing here.
Okay, all right. Well, I finally saw Infinity War, so now it's up to Les, because we know Mike's not going to see it until it hits on demand or something. he's not going to the theater.
No, I'm not going to the theater.
Without prolonging it, I did enjoy it. I thought it was rather well done. It was well paced. There was just the right points for there to be some downtime, and then when things need to pick up, it picked up pretty good. But it's the Russo brothers. They did Winter Soldier, which I thought it was one of the best Marvel Universe movies they've done. It's been done, and I believe they also did Civil War, which I liked. So it was well done. Unfortunately, I knew some of the stuff that was gonna happen, but I still did tear up. I didn't actually bawl or anything, but I did tear up several times. And let's bring on 2019 and see how we get out of this. Liz and I did have some conversations after I saw the film, because she was asking. I sent her a message saying, "Okay, I've seen it, so you can ask me all the questions you were wanting to ask me." And I will point out one thing. One of the complaints I saw about the film is Thanos' motivations for killing off half the universe. And it is a little different in the film. In the film, he's talking about that the universe has limits. There's limit in space. There's a limited of space. There's a limited of resources. And so, if I just wipe out half the universe, then that's going to solve all that problems, because it started off with him on Titan. That was his solution for their problem on Titan. And yeah, that's not how it happened in the comics, and that's fine. It was entirely different motivation for what he did, but I think it worked. I still think it worked. Anything, it's kind of it kind of parallels the situation we have on this planet. Where there are limited resources and there's a lot more people on the planet. So, I'm not advocating kill off half, but it's just kind of a mirror of situations. So, I thought it was handled real well.
Yep, cool.
Alrighty. Before we get into this week's topic, want to take a few moments to thank the fine folks at Things from Another World for being a sponsor of the Fellowship. And right now they are running free shipping on orders of $40 or more of in-stock comics and graphic novels. And this is being run in addition to their evergreen deals, such as 40% off comics, statues, toys, and merchandise, 30% off pre-order manga titles, and 50% off Nick and Dent comics. Now, to learn more information on how you can take advantage of the free shipping, just go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our sponsors tab. And there you'll see all the information of how you can take advantage of such a great deal. And while you're there, just click on some of those links that will take you to their website and let them know that we sent you their way. And the deal offer on free shipping ends May 31st. So you still got about a week or so, but yeah, if you're thinking about it, you need to start thinking a little bit more seriously. And thank you, Things from Underworld, for sponsoring the fellowship. Alrighty. For this week, I think we have approached this topic before, but it's been a while.
We've certainly done stuff similar to this.
We've certainly done something similar. But I think we've actually done this, and it may have been during a podcast or maybe when we did the webcast. Anyway. But with all the comic book movies and TV shows that are out now, speaking of Infinity War, and TV shows are out there now, and several that have been announced coming to the big screen or the TV, such as Fox picking up to do a pilot of Y the Last Man. Infidel from Image Comics was just announced within the last week or so about getting live action adaptation, which would be really cool to see.
Yes, my response to that is ooh.
And so on. I thought we would kind of make some choices of comic book properties that we would love to see a live action adaptation. So, who would like to go first?
I can go first.
Okay.
So, honestly, I have three choices here. And I think if there's going to be a downfall on honestly all three of them, it's going to be the cost of production. And you'll kind of get an idea why as we go along. But the first one on my list is an Image title called Birthright.
Ooh.
And yeah, I've talked about this book before. I like this book a lot. I think you've got, I mean, if nothing else, you've already got 6 trades in the can. So there's plenty of stuff to start with to get this started. And I actually think this would work best as a TV series.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think they should use the shorter form. I guess we could at this point call it, well, I want to say, I was going to say Netflix style, but honestly the BBC was doing it this way long before Netflix ever did, doing shorter run seasons.
Right. Say a dozen episodes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, anywhere between like 8 and 12 episodes would work beautifully, because honestly, this story is structured so nicely that these trades, I mean, the arcs fit together. An arc of this is just like the perfect story by itself, which also feeds, it keeps going after that, but there's usually some nice wrap up to each of the arcs. And if you're not familiar, it is the story. The first issue of the story was an 8-year-old boy disappears when he's playing with his dad. The kid wanders off to go chase the ball into the woods and disappears, is just gone. Which almost completely destroys the family. A year later, the kid shows back up, fully grown, and has spent that whole time, the whole time he was gone, which was like close to 20 years in the world where he was for him, but was only a year in our world, in this fantasy world that's been at war for like centuries. And yeah, and it just, there's so many layers to it. It's just absolutely crazy and awesome. Um, and so the reason that this one would be prohibitively expensive is because there would be an impressive amount of CGI required.
Yeah.
Because not only are there fantasy creatures of unbelievable proportions, there's actually some interesting body type stuff going on in this too. It would be tricky, but man, it would make for some good TV.
Yeah. I agree.
I do too. It's a great read, and I could see this happening. It would be cost prohibitive, but it'd be well worth the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very dramatic story. It's up to its neck in fantasy and good versus evil and all that stuff, but there's so much stuff. I mean, just the family stuff alone it would just knock it out of the park from a TV perspective. It would be as good as any other drama out there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so too. I think it's one of those stories that is extremely intelligent, and it's not sappy. It does not rely on scenes that would be considered maudlin or wasteful. It's very crisp, and everything plays out perfect.
Right, and it's still going strong. I mean, it could go on a while before it hits an end point.
True.
I mean, the way the whole thing works, the end point could come like any time now too. It's the kind of they've set it up beautifully so that it could just keep going and going and going, but it could also they could cut it off if they needed to, or if they decided to.
And if they did a wrap up, it would not be a hurried situation like a lot of comics do right now. When somebody gets told that they're going to cancel the title, so you gotta move this all together.
Right. There's enough stuff there already that they could end the story and do it effectively and do it well. Or they could run another 30 or 40 issues, and I would be fine with that.
Yeah, I think I would too.
Great choice.
Woo.
Well, I can go next, and I'm going to cheat because I'm going to say anything in the Terry Moore verse as a TV series, and that's whether that's Strangers in Paradise or Motor Girl or Echo or Rachel Rising. We talked about his work last week for choices for new readers, our options for new readers. And why it's a good choice for both is what was mentioned last week is the great characters and great character interaction. Nice little drama. Now, whether it's set in a horror theme like Rachel Rising or sci-fi with Echo or whatever, I think those would make for really, really compelling TV programs. And yeah, it would have to be TV. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, you couldn't do it in a 2-hour movie.
Right.
There's just too much there.
I wouldn't think it would be as effective. But a regular TV series, I don't think there needs to be the restriction like you were talking about with Birthright of just only being a certain number of episodes. I think it could be a full, 20 episodes or whatever they do now. I guess it depends on whatever format it gets, whatever format they use. But I think it would be a successful show.
No argument here.
I don't have an argument with it either. I think it's a great choice. I can see this happening. That is, if somebody would wake up and take it for its true value.
The sad thing is Strangers has been optioned a couple of times, and I think Terry has the rights back. And there's been discussions about Rachel Rising a couple of times, but there's just nothing has ever been finalized and moved on, and that's kind of sad. But the fact that people are still talking to him about it and still trying to get something done makes me feel good and gives me hope that we may see something in the not too distant future.
That sounds cool.
Well, let me ask you this.
Uh-oh.
One of my choices would probably be better as an animated film or TV series, probably a series. I can see half-hour episodes of Jeff Smith's Bone, getting to tell you the 30 to 35 issues that he did for this series and tell you the story of Bone, who leaves Boneville to venture out and see what else is in the world, carrying his copy of Moby Dick and coming across various people, as well as some of his ne'er-do-well family members. It's an all-ages title, and I think this would have enough humor that it would wrap up adults too, to sit and watch little half-hour clips of, to me, one of the best stories out there for an all ages. I'm just overwhelmed by it, and I've told you before, this is a title that I recommend to people, and it helps me feel, it makes me feel good to do just that.
I think you can go both ways. I think it could be a successful animated series. I could see it also being a hour and a half or 2-hour animated movie too. I think it can work both ways.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Given the success that it's seen, I'm a little surprised. Well, we'll put it this way. I find myself wondering why it hasn't already been done.
That's a good point.
Seems like a natural choice, honestly.
I haven't heard of anything, if there's been any attempt or not, but that doesn't mean that, I guess if there had been, we would have heard something, but I don't know. But it is a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Alrighty, Mikey.
Oh, that makes it my turn again. Okay, well, this is... I've talked about this one quite a bit too over the last couple of years. And it's another one that I think CGI is going to be interesting on. And it's actually another Image book, one that's been going for a little while, and I think Manifest Destiny would make a really cool, again, short form TV series. It would cost an awful lot to do. Actually, maybe less than Birthright would, just because you're not having to do so many weird things to so many people. But there would be some stuff. But it is, again, it is the story of the Lewis and Clark expedition, with some very interesting twists along the way. There's more out there than just lots and lots of empty space and the occasional Native American running around. It is chock full of danger, and so it goes into some detail about the people, the men they bring on the trip. You get to know some of them pretty well. And given the situation that they're expecting to run into, there are some of the men they bring are essentially conscripted out of prison. People with like death sentences and stuff on their heads, and so it makes for some very wild interactions between like the regular soldiers and essentially the prisoners who were told, okay, you can either do this or we're going to hang you. So we'll call them volunteers. But yeah, there are monsters out there, and it has been. This is another book that has run 5 or 6 trades worth of stuff, 5 or 6 story arcs, and I kind of started reading it because I thought the historical implications would be interesting, and then it completely hooked me because there's this really wild fantasy element in it too, which is not. I mean, it's really just that there's monsters out there, but it's not. There's not like dimensional travel like you've got in Birthright, but it's a well written story, and a lot of it is written from the perspectives of Lewis and Clark themselves, because they're in charge of the whole thing, and they clash sometimes and they agree sometimes, and there's other characters that come in that have been created, and then there's of course Sacagawea, who is her own interesting character, which we still don't know everything about, and it would be really fun to see where they would take how some of the stuff they would really look in 3 dimensions, in a kind of a live action sense.
Cool choice.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I kind of went with the if I had unlimited amounts of money to do this concept, but I think these are good stories too. So
They are.
And I think that you have to look at it like you have untold amounts of money.
right, but then you usually have to figure out how to do it on a budget after that. You start with okay, what story would I tell if I could make whatever I wanted, and then okay, so we sold them on it. Now how do we make this on X amount per episode? I bet that happens a lot in Hollywood, actually, but you know.
Alrighty. For my second choice, yeah, I guess my budget's going to be up there a little bit. Maybe not to the extreme of Birthright, but it could be up there. Depends on how they handle it. But I think it'd be an interesting story. Maybe controversial for some people, but I don't think so. I think it's a rather interesting. It's a cool story, and it's another one that got mentioned last week. I think Manifest Necessity got mentioned last week too, and Bone, if I'm not mistaken.
I know Bone did. If I mentioned Manifest Destiny, it was just in passing.
Okay. In my book is Dark Ark. Yeah, a lot of the monsters are going to probably be CGI, but maybe not all of them. But I just love this story. I think I mentioned it when I mentioned this last week. Is I love the, oh my God, why hadn't somebody thought of doing this before? And when someone does that, it always knocks me on my feet. And this is a perfect example. Why hadn't someone thought about there being basically a anti-Noah's Ark, a sorcerer who's built an ark that holds all the monsters during the Great Flood that's mentioned in the Bible. It obviously cannot be a long-running series, but then again, I don't expect the comic to be a long-running series. At some point, the rain's going to stop, and we'll have to deal with how that ends. But it's just such a intriguing story because you have all the monsters that are just don't play well with each other. Plus the fact that I really don't want to spoil the big thing regarding the sorcerer and his family and what they're supposed to be. The conditions that were set for this task. But
not to mention some of the dietary requirements. But anyway,
true. Just. Oh man, it's been really, really good so far. I mean, we're only 6 issues in, but still, they've been very strong issues. They've been really good stories.
Okay, so last week you said you hadn't read issue 6 yet. Have you read it now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Yes, I have. Yes.
It's also going in a very interesting direction.
Exactly, and there's where the budget kind of gets blown up.
Well, a bit, yeah. A bit. Yeah, this is... I am also enjoying the hell out of this series, and yeah, it would be a challenge to make, but it would be really cool.
Oh, they could always do it animated.
And I really don't know how this story is going to end. Wow.
Yeah.
It's really cool and a lot of fun, but I don't know how this. I just don't know how it can end well. I just don't. And that's as much spoiler as I'm going to give, but yeah, it's really good. It is really good.
For my second choice, for live action, I would like to see Paper Girls. A simple story that takes such a strange turn. And I'm sorry, Mike, it gets into time travel. But it's a story that is solid. And currently it's both solid in story and in art. But when you have a group of girls, probably between 10 and 13, performing the duties of newspaper delivery. But then they are accosted by the government. They start seeing things, and then, like I said, the time travel starts setting in. And the time travel is essentially several of the girls end up meeting the future selves. It's to me, it's just a great concept, and I can see this either going as a movie, and I'm thinking 2 hours, maybe a little more than that, or individual episodes on television. I think that would be a lot of fun, and if they stick pretty close to the script, which does not vary all that much, everything is in succession. I think that this could be a pretty powerful program itself.
Does sound like it could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Time travel or no?
It's a good choice, definitely. Alrighty, Mikey.
Okay, so this one's my cheater. And I specifically went into this thinking TV series. As far as how many episodes per season, I'm not sure it matters. I think if you do this right, there's plenty of material to draw from. Okay, my actual choice here is Hellboy. Because while I liked the movies, I don't think they were able to fit enough into them to make cohesive stories, basically. Which to me just says, okay, we just need a longer format, which is where you bring in a TV series, because you could run a 12 or 13 episode season, or you could run a 22 episode season, and there's plenty of stuff to pull from. So it's really not a big deal, but there's some really good stories there. And there's some really interesting characters, and there's some interesting monsters, and there's some great bad guys. And I just, like I said, you watch the movies and you're like, man, they just didn't do anywhere near enough with Rasputin in that. There's so much more to that character, and they just barely scraped the surface to cram it into a 2-hour movie. And I'm just like, come on, man, do that. I mean, that first movie, that's an entire season of TV. Let's be honest. You could make that, I mean, you'd have to add some stuff in, sure. But you spread that out over an entire season, and you bring in, and it would work so much better. So much better.
Okay, it's a TV series. Yeah.
I would like to see that done.
So much better. And like I said, I like the movies, but
and we're getting new movies too. So,
are we actually getting new movies? I know There has been a lot of blah blah about it for the last year or so. I had never actually heard anything concrete.
They are rebooting it, and it's not going to be Ron Perlman.
Yeah, I think Ron Perlman is a little on the old side at this point, even with all the makeup. I just think that's a bad idea.
Right.
But he did a great job. Don't get me wrong. He did a fantastic job. That's a lot of what made those movies good was him. But
right.
Yeah, I just don't think he's the guy anymore.
Right. Okay. Could be interesting. Very interesting. Yep. For my next choice, I guess you could do it as a TV series, but I was kind of thinking more movie, because the last film we got was 20 years ago. Something like, about around there. I would love to see a new Shadow.
Yeah, that was
I,
like 94. Somewhere in there.
yeah,
93, 94, 95, somewhere in there.
and I liked that film.
So did I, but not very many other people did.
Right. Um,
And I'm sorry I'm one of those people. I did not care for that run by Alec Baldwin.
I'm not 100% sure he was the best choice for that role,
right.
so I'll agree to an extent. I mean, I think he did okay with it, but yeah, I think I think there were others who could have done better, for sure. And if nothing else, it's a nice obscure role to see Ian McKellen in. But anyway.
Oh, yeah, true. Well, if you want to go, oh no, never mind. I like the character. I think he would do well. I mean, with the series, they could really build on the mystery. They could do like a season of setting him up, how he becomes a Shadow, or they could just not even acknowledge that and just
jump in the middle.
He should just jump in. This is kind of like early in the career, so the criminals are trying to figure out what the hell's going on and all that, which may actually be even more interesting because they obviously don't know what the hell they're dealing with, and neither does the audience. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I honestly think one of the mistakes the '90s movie made was kind of deconstructing his origin a little too much. So I think it might be more interesting to just avoid the origin entirely. So I agree with you there.
You're one of those like we don't need that origin.
Well, true enough. But it's and it's. I mean, and my other thing with this is there would have to be some serious debate on whether you're going to do this as a period thing or just make it modern.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the other problems I had with it was that I think they tried a little too hard to make it period, and then kind of like halfway through forgot that they were doing that, and so it's a little weird in the terms of how well set in the 30s or 40s it was. It didn't. The costumes were interesting, but only to a point, and then it kind of just got weird. I don't know.
Well, to that, I would suggest take a page from Batman the Animated Series, where you see some classical design and that kind of stuff, but there's obviously contemporary, and so it's kind of a mixture. So it doesn't date the movie or show at all.
I think
you don't know.
I think an argument could be made that they did that, but did a really bad job of it in the first place.
Oh.
But I don't know.
I'd have to go back and watch it for to kind of get that, but
yeah, somehow it worked in the Batman series, but it really didn't in the Shadow movie. And I don't know. I'm not sure why. It's honestly been a while since I've seen the Shadow movie, but
it has been a while for me too. But I just I think they actually tried to have it as a period piece, but yeah, if they try to make it, they muddy it up to where you don't know, and they never let on.
Yeah, it just gets a little strange.
Yeah.
And I think that was why people didn't really like it that much. Is that if I remember correctly, it was Russell Mulcahy that made it. Is that right? Am I remembering that right?
Don't get me to lie. I can.
And the reason I that sticks in my head is because he did the Highlander movie about
Okay.
10 years before. And there are some kind of similarities in pacing in the two movies, and it honestly, that for me was one of the weaknesses of Highlander, was that it was paced kind of oddly. It didn't flow real well, and the Shadow movie kind of didn't either. And I'm sitting here saying I like this movie, and I'm breaking it down horribly, but well, the problem is I think I liked it more than it deserved, because the Shadow is a really cool character.
Right.
And they did some really cool effects with it. But yeah, there were just some. I think it suffered badly from story issues, and then the pacing, like I said, was kind of weird. Other than that, it was good.
And you are correct, sir. It is Mulcahy who
Yeah,
directed it.
and I guess I just don't like his movies much. I want to say there was one that I kind of liked, but I'm drawing a blank on what it was now. But I mean, Highlander was all right too. I'm not sure it did quite deserve the cult. I mean, well, maybe it deserved the cult status it got. It certainly didn't. I certainly wouldn't have called it a good movie. It was not a terrible movie. But then, so there's a lot of kind of similar tone with Shadow, which works to an extent, I think. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up now.
Well, obviously, someone agrees with you, because I'm looking at his filmography, and most of his last films have been television films.
Yeah, I mean, he was never a huge Hollywood guy anyway, I don't think. But I mean, his most successful movies have been mediocre successes. So unless there's one I'm forgetting, but yeah, so he kind of, in a way, he kind of pigeonholed himself a bit by doing some slightly offbeat movies like those two. And yeah, I agree. I would like to see Shadow in a much longer form. I think a TV show is the way to go there, because it lets you build the character a little better. It lets you build kind of both characters, as well as the other characters around him. But I mean, it lets you build Cranston as a character and lets you build Shadow as a character, and kind of lets give you can play them off of each other, and it would make for some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But if you look at something like that, let's do the Green Hornet correctly. Let's do something which is not a comedy, which doesn't let the star of this film mug for the camera the whole time. But that's not my choice. I'm just bringing that up because it would be nice to have a good, solid story for the Green Hornet and show the background, show the origin, show that he was a descendant of the Lone Ranger. But a few comic lines is fine, but to think that you just have to go overboard with it. Now, I was excited about the movie when it was announced. Then I saw who was involved and I was crushed.
Yeah. I watched that movie. I'm sad to say.
Oh.
It was as bad as you can imagine too, but I kind of agree, and this is one that I will say I will agree with you. Let's see an origin story for the Green Hornet. I think that would be amazing. Mainly because, and partly I say that because it's one that hasn't been overtold up to this point. It's one that we
Mm-hmm.
have barely even seen. So I would be interested just honestly for the fact that I don't know it. But also, it I think it would be more effective than the origin story of, say, the Shadow, just because it's going to be a little more relatable. I mean, the Shadow's got some weird shit in his background, and I think Hornet is a little more realistic, and I think that makes it more interesting. I mean, what makes a regular guy do what he's doing? I mean, if Shadow's got all these whatever the mind stuff he's got, I mean, he's doing something that people don't understand, and that's fine, but don't go so far out of your way to tell me that he's doing something that we're never really going to understand, because that's not relatable.
Yeah.
You tell me that's fine. You can tell me that in a sentence. You're never going to understand it. That's it. Okay, fine. Then give me stories that show me cool stuff. That's fine. But with Hornet, you've got kind of a regular guy. I mean, yes, sure, he's got a lot of money, but anybody could have a lot of money. I could have a lot of money if I hit the lottery.
Yeah.
Why would I go out and fight crime? That's a leap, and that's an interesting psychological leap. So, go for it. Tell the origin story. But yeah, do it correctly. I mean, and I'm all for playing with stories when you're adapting them to a modern audience. That's fine, but yeah, Seth Rogen was not the guy for that. I mean, that was a case where he managed to get hold of something he thought would be really cool and cast himself in it without realizing, okay, this is not the story anymore. We're just messing with this now. We're playing.
Yeah.
And that was disappointing to a lot of people, I think. And the movie sucked.
Well, yeah. Tell the origin. Tell the origin of the Shadow. Tell the origin of the Green Hornet. We know that their mother's name is not Martha, so it's not going to be a contention of any sort.
Do we know that? Are we sure?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just checking. Just want to make sure.
So yeah, let's do something solid with this one.
I'm down with that.
But my choice in a live action, this may be CGI partially, but it's a title that you and I both like, Mike, and that is Atomic Robo. You've got some history. You've definitely got background of Tesla and what he was forced to do by his nemesis. And I think that this could be a fun little series, but to do it maybe on television in little story arcs, just like the books come out. 5 issues, maybe 5 episodes, to telling a total story. And each one kind of link in. There is no imaginary story, or there's no breaks in it. You actually have to watch them in order to get a full story of Atomic Robo. And I think that would be pretty freaking solid.
Oh, hell yeah. And I'll go ahead and be the one to do it. I'll cop out on this. I think this should be animated. I don't think you're going to get the same effect live action. If you do, it's going to look like Pacific Rim. Especially especially when you get to some of the later stuff, and I just think that's a bad idea. I'm not a fan of those movies. I'm not going to lie. Or that movie. I've only seen the first one, and I regret watching it to this day.
But Les loved it.
Okay.
What the what?
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
Beep, 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 beep.
I think it will. There's enough. I think you get into the super science kind of stuff enough that you're just going to save yourself some trouble by going animated. That and Robo himself I don't know how you do that. I think if you did him CGI in a room full of live action people, I don't know that you can make that look good. I don't know that you can make it look right. I think you're just going to be better off animating it.
You don't think you could do it like Boxy and animate it that way?
You're talking about a dude in a robot suit? No, I think that's a bad idea.
Oh, okay.
I don't. Today, in a post Gollum world, maybe you could do some mocap that would look decent, I guess, but I don't know. I think it's risky. I think unless you've got Peter Jackson money, I think you're running the risk that it's going to look like a dude in a mocap suit. You're going to run the risk that he ran in the Two Towers when Legolas looked like something fresh off of a PlayStation game. Mainly because that character was pretty much written as a video game. But there were some times in there where they just had to go CGI with it, and it just looked like CGI. And I think I'd rather avoid that problem, at least for now. If you're going to do a Robo movie today, just animate it. I think it's just going to be easier.
And I want to make one correction before someone decides to shoot us an email. Boxy was the kid. You're talking about Muffet.
Oh, thank you.
Because I'm sure someone's out there like, Boxy was the boy. Yes.
Well, he was a robot too, wasn't he?
I knew what you meant, man. I knew
what you meant. Well, I mean, it took me a little bit, and then when Mike said the suit, and I was like, oh, he's talking about Muffet.
Yeah.
The Daggett.
Now that you say that.
But wasn't the kid a robot too?
No.
Oh, his acting was.
Ouch.
And what's your favorite movie again there, Les?
The Electric Boogaloo movie.
Alrighty. Any other choices? Or should we cut stop while we're ahead?
Stop while only half our choices are basically the same as last week's. Yeah, I thought about Invisible Republic for this because I think it would fit well, but I chose not to put it on my list because I picked it last week.
I have one that I want to reach back to the old days.
Before last week?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I would like to see a TV series of Star Rovers.
What?
I'm sorry?
What?
Star Rovers was a small story that appeared in Mystery and Space Comics. And it was about three adventurers that would solve crimes. You had Homer Glint, who was a sportsman and a novelist. Carol Sorensen was a former Miss Solar System winner who became a space adventurer.
As you
and
do.
The third was, I'm sorry?
As you do.
Oh, yeah. And the third was Rick Purvis, a Playboy. They would be hired to solve a crime, and each would disagree with the others, so they would all go out and solve the crime on their own. And they would come, at the end of the story, they would come in to tell how they solved the crime. But every time, they were wrong. All of them were wrong. It would take a lot of writing to do this. And the creators, of course, are no longer with us. But I think it would be just a fun little hour-long program of them trying to get something done, but failing to do so. I read those stories in Mystery in Space, loved each time they appeared in the comic. And what they did was not all that long in there. They ran such a short length. It was like in, I want to say between 61 and 63. The years of 1961, 1963 that they were published. And it wasn't every issue, but each time they did appear, I was really thoroughly engrossed in what they had to do.
That actually sounds a lot more interesting than what I thought of when you said that title.
Oh, okay.
Because I had Dogs in Space in my head when you said Star Rovers. I'm not gonna lie. And then you said Solving Crimes, and I'm like, wow, this is getting interesting. But right, ruh-roh. And forgive me if I'm oversimplifying the concept, but this sounds. My brain works this way. This sounds a lot like the Clue movie as an ongoing TV series.
I would say yes.
In which case, I'm in. Because that sounds like fun. I would love to have seen more of that. Just because, if for no other reason than just because it's so crazy. To find a way to organize that crazy and be able to present it on a semi-regular basis would be utterly awesome. So I think this is a cool idea.
Plus the fact we got to figure out who punched a lunch Blanche instead of lunch.
Yet another obscure reference, but okay. Nothing wrong with those.
Nope. Alrighty. If you got any more picks?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm hanging up mine, so.
Okay. With that, we're going to take a quick break and be back with weekly picks. And we're back. It is time for our weekly picks, and leading off is Les.
My first pick from American mythology is Pellucidar at the Earth's core. This is a number 1, and I would say this one kind of sells itself. You're looking at 2 different storylines from Edgar Rice Burroughs. And this is that you have Pellucidar, which is the land of monsters being prehistoric, and at the Earth's core, which is somewhat similar, but the idea you also have natives living there. I'm looking forward to this one because I do enjoy the stories from Burroughs as far as his Mars stories, his Pellucidar stories, and the Earth's core. So hopefully this one will sit well with the listeners too.
Yeah, this is a first of 4, I believe, one-shots that are kind of featuring his work. Another one's going to be Carson of Venus and Moon Maid, and I can't remember what the other one was. So this is going to be interesting. It's going to be nice to see these other properties kind of get featured.
Yes.
Yep. Some fun adventure stories for sure.
Yep. Alrighty. Mike, you're next.
I'm next. Well, my first title is a Dark Horse book, and this is Witchfinder, The Gates of Heaven, #1. The Witchfinder series is a Mike Mignola creation. I believe it is part of the Hellboy universe. I am not 100% sure of that, but I think it is. But it is Sir Edward Grey is known as the Witchfinder, and he is a kind of a special agent to Queen Victoria. So that gives you an idea when this is set. This is set like right before the turn of the 20th century. And he's the guy who investigates the weird occult stuff for the British government at the time, for the Crown. And so it's usually some nice dark fun stories here. And like I said, it's a Mike Mignola creation, so some cool design work has taken place. At this point, I think he's usually letting others draw these. This actually doesn't list an artist off right that I can see, but the art is usually awesome in these things, and the stories are pretty much what you have come to expect from Mignola and the Hellboy universe. So fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. Oh, I am next, and for my first choice, I am going with Boom Studios. This is going to be the second volume and the wrap up of the series Misfit City. This was a fun book. I've always said it's kind of a spiritual sequel to the Goonies. And in this part 2, we see the girls trying to locate Black Mary's treasure. And if you did not check this out when it came out in individual form, I would definitely recommend you pick up the collection. You will not be disappointed.
Sweet.
It is a great story.
Alrighty, Les, you're up again.
Okay, for my second choice, I'm going to Dynamite Entertainment and looking at Pathfinder Worldscape. This is a 4-issue series in which the characters from Pathfinder meet 4 different characters from other books by Dynamite. One is Reanimator. A second is Swords of Sorrow. third is Vampirella, and fourth is Deja Thoris. I could not find a write-up about these, but just the idea of a crossover of this magnitude, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. I think I'm going to have to go to my comic shop and tell them, please grab these for me.
Yeah, they've done a little bit of crossover stuff with the Pathfinder books. I would say last year, give or take, a year or so ago. And it actually worked surprisingly. I was pleasantly surprised at how well it worked. So I think this is going to probably be pretty along the same lines and work very nicely.
Yep. I agree. Mikey.
Okie dokie. My second choice is an Image title, and this is actually the first trade, or at least I hope the first trade. I would like to see more from this series. The series is called Sacred Creatures. This particular trade collects issues 1 through 6, and this is the story of Josh, who is a regular guy. His girlfriend is about to pop. She's pregnant. She's very pregnant. And this guy Josh gets dragged into this kind of battle royal among this family of immortal creatures who have basically been pulling the puppet strings of humanity forever. And there's just so much craziness in this book, and it's so awesome, and it borders on, it's like this kind of supernatural element to it, and it's just awesome. I can't think of a better word to describe it than just awesome. This kind of stuff is right up my alley, though. It's this modern fantasy type stuff, and some of it, there's like flashbacks into the past about some of the battles between some of these creatures, and it's a lot of fun. And this poor guy Josh is just completely caught in the middle. He's just such an innocent victim of the whole thing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I need to check this one out. This is one of them that kind of was under my radar. But definitely sounds interesting.
Yeah, that it does.
Alrighty. For my second choice, I'm going with another collection. And this is a new edition of JLA Year 1. Obviously, this is from DC Comics. And this retails, hey Mikey, this retails an origin. But this is the origin of the Justice League. But this is slated after Crisis. So the lineup was Flash, Green Lantern, Black Canary, Martian Manhunter, and Aquaman. So there was no Superman or Batman. And how they became a team, and in the early days. And not only does this collect the 12 issues, but there's a ton of other bonus material. And this was written by Brian Augustin with art by Mark Baer, John Stokes, and Mark Probst with a beautiful Barry Kitson cover. I remember getting the floppies when this came out a long time ago and really enjoying this book. So I'm glad to see a new edition of this story getting out there.
Cool.
And if I remember correctly, this is when the Justice League was fun too. This is when it wasn't all serious. They pop jokes in this stuff. So it's a good remembrance.
And our honorable mention this week.
Well, I've got that, and this is a Dynamite book. And this is a Volume 1 trade of Betty Page, which was a fun little kind of surprising title. It was one of those that I kind of started looking at thinking, well, okay, this is not really knowing where it was going to go and how it was going to end up. And it turned out to be a fun little adventure story, kind of set in the early 50s, starring someone who doesn't really get a whole lot of credit for much of anything, unfortunately. I mean, despite the fact that she did a lot of she had a lot of influence, whether she knew it or not, and whether it was immediate or not. Actually, I think a lot of it came on a little later as her stuff kind of got rediscovered. But I mean, and most of what she did was just modeling, but there was a lot of she had a lot of sway over kind of fashion, and I mean, and not necessarily mainstream fashion either at the time, but Betty Page had kind of became an icon without realizing it. And the idea of taking her and making her a kind of a character in this, what's essentially a big kind of adventure spy story, it works really well. And I will also admit to being a little surprised that the first volume trade is just now coming out, given that we just finished the second arc not too long ago. But so it's just a weird timing thing, I think. But it's a fun little story, and I definitely recommend following it through both of the arcs.
It has been fun.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of Betty Page too, and this was a very interesting read, and it does take you back. I know it was before your time, guys, but yeah, I was around at that time too, so it resonates.
Yep. Hope they keep going with this. I'd love to see a third arc start up just any old time now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it was a lot of fun.
Alrighty. Special mentions this week. I have one.
Go for
But
it.
do y'all have one? Y'all have one?
I was just gonna say, we're hoping to see Liz back next week.
Well, that's one. Okay. Yep. Les?
I'm pretty void here now, so.
Okay. I would be remiss if we don't acknowledge the passing of Margot Kidder.
Oh yeah.
At the age of 69. It's amazing thing. We kind of complain about some of the negative aspects about social media but when something like this happens, to see the love and support that have come out for her, not only because she's in a lot of people's minds and hearts, she is the definitive Lois Lane, but just what she did in regards to talking out about mental illness and try to be a change and try for us to try to do more to help those who suffer. It's great seeing some of the funny stories, and honestly, I believe a lot of them. I'd never had the chance to meet her, and I wish I had. But she's my Lois Lane. So I thought we should at least, obviously our thoughts and condolences go to her family and friends and loved ones at this time.
Agreed.
Okay, with that, we will move over to our regular shout-outs. First off, we say thank you to Manny the Martyr for the wonderful music that we use for our podcast. You should definitely go check out their music. We'll have a link in their on our show notes. Second of all, I'd like to thank our fellow podcasters, make up the Podern family. You definitely should check them out. All you got to do is just go over to Twitter and do a search, hashtag Podern family as one word. Or, if you're following us on Twitter, we're usually retweeting a lot of podcasts links. So just if you want to check out what we're retweeting, there you go. Knock yourselves out, and I'm sure you'll have fun. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and checking out today's episode. Appreciate your support and pass. We always value your feedback. If you have a comment, suggestion, complaint, observation, whatever, we welcome it. Please let us know what you're thinking. There are several ways you can do that. Email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, or you can just go to our website and click on the About Us tab, and you can there's a contact form which you can fill out there, and we will get that. You can also follow us on our social media. We're on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks, and obviously we are also on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. If you'd like to follow our personal accounts on Twitter, feel free to do so. Mike is at MikeyGeek. Liz is at Newman_L. And I'm at TomTCGeek. And wherever you download or listen to our episodes, whether it's through iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, if you could, please rate our show. If you have a couple extra moments, review would be awesome as well. Okay. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
And once again, Liz, I hope you're doing okay, and hopefully you'll be with us next week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We do appreciate the support. And until next time, read more comics and support your local stores.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,